Welcome back to the Get a Q podcast. My name is Brandon Hall. I'm pleased to be joined today by Norton Public Schools District Technology Integrator, Christina Scilingo. Christina comes to us from originally in Norton Middle School, but is now a district-wide position. Christina, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you, Brandon. I'm so glad to be here.
So, Christina, you've basically filled every single type of teaching position that's possibly to fill in Norton. Tell us about your journey through Norton.
So my journey through Norton started when I was a senior at Stonehill College, and I was placed at Norton High School as a student teacher. And legitimately, the day after I graduated, so I graduated from Stonehill on a Sunday, and I woke up on Monday morning and went to work at Norton Middle School as a long-term sub for a grade 7 teacher. And by the end of that June, I knew that I was officially joining the staff of Norton Middle School as grade 6 social studies teacher. From there, I just kept adding titles, I guess. I became the teacher technology liaison for Norton Middle School, girls basketball coach, girls soccer coach. And this year is my first year as pre-K to 12. Digital learning specialist and integrator, and so I sometimes jokingly say that I'm like a Pokemon and I just keep evolving and keep growing within Norton Public Schools. But it's been a great journey, and I'm so excited to have this role this year.
Yeah, so the difference, in leaving the classroom, in having that, group of kids in front of you every single day, and knowing their names and their faces and their needs, and knowing their families, and then going to a district-wide position, you now see how many students are there in Norton? Some, in the 20-something hundred range?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I should know this. This is super embarrassing that I don't. We're a relatively small district. If I had to say, maybe between 1,000 and 1,500. But don't quote me on that.
But that's such a huge difference where you have now an impact on pre-K to 12 that, you could be in a class with 4 and 5-year-olds, using Writing Wizard and using their fingers to draw letters, and then be in a class of seniors who are, prepping college applications.
Right. I was talking to Karen Winsper, who is our amazing director of instructional technology, about this just the other week. And I said, one of the coolest things about this role is I used to just think of the students that I had as my students, right? And the students that I formerly had as my former students. And now I just kind of, any classroom I walk into, any building I'm in, because we're spread across 5 buildings, I think of every single kid as my kid. And every single student is my student. And I have a vested stake in their education and their learning, and, what's going on in their day to day. And so it is really, really cool and really exciting to walk into, like you said, a preschool classroom, and then just a couple minutes later, hop in my car, go down the road, and walk into a classroom of seniors and see kind of that beginning of their journey in Norton Public Schools all the way through to the end of their journey in Norton Public Schools.
Yeah, and then you and I have similar paths here. That we're both Skyhawks. I was a chieftain, but we'll leave
Right.
that for the people who
You
actually
evolve too. You could be a Pokemon too.
evolve into a Skyhawk. So we're both Stonehill graduates, right? And we both started as social studies teachers, and have now gone into district technology integration and looking at technology and education. How have you seen that position evolve, even in the short amount of time from, say, 7 years ago when you graduated to now?
Oh man, there has been a lot of evolution, that's for sure. And actually, I have to give like a really quick shout out to Stonehill College for their teacher preparation program, because what I found a lot when I took on the role of teacher technology liaison and now this role is, I think sometimes people kind of say like, oh, well, you're younger, like, you grew up with this and you got all this training. And Stonehill's philosophy when I was there, so I graduated in 2010, their philosophy was technology is not a magic wand. Technology is not going to magically make your lesson better or great. It's not going to poof, turn you into this amazing teacher. You have to know how to build a great lesson with nothing. You have to know what good teaching looks like with just you and like no props. And kind of forcing us to think about it that way I think really helped shape me into like, this is not a crutch. This is not just something that, like I almost picture like those like apothecary people at like Renaissance fairs being like,
Yeah.
here's a potion, here's a person, here's a potion. It's not that. And I think the way Karen Winsper sort of introduced one-to-one technology into the district, the way my building principal, Vinnie Hayward, sort of let us as professionals decide what to do with it, I think that alone made people grow by leaps and bounds in terms of what they were going to make of it. It wasn't, here you go, now you just can sit at your desk and, sit back.
Right. Right.
It was, this is a tool.
Yeah.
And just like any tool, let's learn how to use it effectively and let's leverage all that we can so that we're really providing the best possible education for students.
Yeah. And like Bloom's taxonomy, the SAMR model, you starting with substitution, right? When you got to get people in somewhere at the ground level. And if it's going from paper and pencil to, writing an essay to using Google Docs, right? So there's an easy substitution right there and getting comfortable with that and then moving to augmentation and getting eventually to that sort of redefinition. How do you see yourself as a tech coach try and encourage people, right? So you obviously have a knowledge of the district and the people in the district because you've been there so long. How do you work with people? What do you feel like your style is to try and encourage people to go further and push themselves?
Right. So I think given the fact that this was a new position this year and all of the craziness of this year, I think we as a technology department sort of decided we have to make everything bite-sized this year.
Mm-hmm.
We know people's time is so precious. We know people are under incredible stress. So much is being asked of them that we need to make things as approachable and easy and as feasible as humanly possible. In an effort to make things as easy to digest as possible, but also hit such a diverse range of needs, to kind of go along with our light bites or bite-sized basics YouTube videos. Every Wednesday, I send out 3 quick tips. And I'm a child in the 90s, so I have a ton of nostalgia for the Light Brights toy where you plug the colored pegs in to the board and it kind of lights up. So I designed my Google Slides to look like that.
Cool.
And it has 3 quick tips, and I kind of try to cover almost like a basic and intermediate and an advanced because, we want for the people who are still gaining their confidence in their tech ability, I don't want them to feel left out. I don't want them to feel like I'm talking another language. And at the same time, all those people that want to be pushed and want more resources and really want to take something and run with it, I don't want them to feel like, well, just because it's called bite-sized basics, it doesn't have to actually be basic. You can take something from this and create something super cool and super complex with it, with you and your students.
That's cool. So we talked earlier about sort of looking at this position and the technology integration in general as kind of past, present, and future. And I loved the analogy that you made. Can you kind of go into that a little bit and talk about how, when you look at this position as a new tech integrator, moving from the classroom, how there's sort of, you got 3 roles there.
Right. So one of the most challenging parts of the role is that you sort of have to operate in like, I want to say 3 different time zones. It's like 3 different, literally like frames of reference. You got the past, you got the present, and you got the future. So once you push something out, or once you put something, on your district website or on the YouTube channel, that doesn't mean necessarily it sunk into everybody.
Right.
So you always have to kind of dig up stuff from the past. And that once it goes out, like, people are like, I can't track down that email. I got to find this. I know you sent this out somewhere. And then you have all your issues that come up in your day to day. This isn't working, that isn't working. I want a lesson that kind of looks like this. And then you always have to kind of keep an eye on the future and what updates are coming out. What's our next steps? How are we going to continue to grow as a district? So you have to sort of juggle these 3 different things all at once simultaneously, day after day. So it is no wonder that I never know what day it is. Mondays usually stick out because that's our full remote day. So I say it doesn't come in waves, it comes in tsunami on Monday. And then I basically catch up to everything on Friday and get ready for the next tsunami coming the following Monday.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the thing that people don't necessarily recognize, that as a one person operation, you get hit from all sides, and it's constant. Like,
Right,
and
right.
it's not just one building saying like, "Hey, we're having some issues here with this thing," or "I was hoping you could do some coaching on this tool." It's across the board, the entire staff in all 5 buildings.
Yeah, yeah. So, and it's like, so you have the past, present, and future, and then you also have student, staff, and
Right.
families. So it's like you got these three different times, you got these three different groups of people, and then I just continue to be amazed by, like, I'll throw stuff out there, and sometimes, like, especially being a one person role, sometimes I just say, like, I think I'm just throwing stuff into the abyss. Like, I'm throwing stuff out there, I have no idea what's sticking, and I'll just like run into someone and have a conversation with them. Like, I ran into our athletic director, and he was like, "Oh my god, I love that you sent that out," and I'm like, I would have honestly never thought in a million years like this would be supporting you as athletic director, or
Right.
like, last year we sort of piloted a coaching program and the school nurse signed up for technology coaching. I'm like, you're really connected to every single person, every single staff member, every single student in the entire district.
Yeah.
And I will not take that for granted. That's a very cool part of my position.
Yeah, it certainly is really unique, and the pandemic has made it unique in and of itself. In the spring, when you had a classroom, how do you see what the spring was like compared to your position now, where you're still supporting people? You were once one of the ones who was supporting people and teaching at the same time, and now you're supporting those teachers.
Right.
How has that been?
I think it's been one of my favorite parts of the role because I know we talked about my path through Norton, and I just look at, even in just being in this district for a little over 7 years, um, I look at all of the people that helped me. I think about Eric Green and Melissa Beck, who I was their student teacher. I think about Mark Liberatore, who's the head of the social studies department. I think about the seventh grade team that welcomed me when I was a long-term sub. I think about the sixth grade team that then did. I think about, my principal who cheered me on at every single, conference I presented at. I actually think, obviously Karen Winsper and actually Kim Sajak, one
Mhm.
of our speech and language pathologists, who I know is on this podcast too, they were the two that encouraged me to present at MassQ for the first time. And that kind of like, once I did that, there was no turning back in my career in ed tech. And I think about, just in such a short span of time, how many people helped me and paved the way for me and rooted for me. And it's like, now I get to be in a role where I'm helping other
Mm.
educators. Like, what more can I ask for? Like, that is so cool to give back to a district that has given me so much. I'm the type of person that, like, I think I came home from kindergarten and said, I want to be a teacher,
Yeah.
and just never looked at anything else. And so to be doing this for the district that kind of let me fulfill that, in the district where I've learned so much about what it means to be an educator, is something that I'm truly grateful for.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the pandemic has really brought about a lot of change in education, and
Right.
education is in some ways, very forward thinking, and some of the, the great changes in society have come through education. And in other ways, it's, we still got people sitting in rows in
Oh
classrooms,
yeah.
right? And the teacher isn't,
Whenever.
yeah, right. And the teacher is sitting in the front of the room, standing in the front of the room, and kind of, the sage on the stage, that model. But this is really, the pandemic has thrown that completely out the window.
Right.
What sort of new teaching practices have you seen in Norton? Because as a tech integrator, I don't think people understand is that you get to go into these classrooms with these teachers and help teach lessons. Like,
Right.
you're not just in your social studies class, which was a lot of fun. You're now co-teaching science.
Right.
You keep co-teaching 8th grade science, and the next thing you know, you're in a calculus class, AP calculus class in high school, or you
Right.
go down to the pre-K class, and it's just like
Yeah.
all over the place. It's wild.
I don't know if I would like, it is a teaching practice. It's almost like more of what I'm noticing more than ever before is just a, a culture of embracing risk taking. And I think that's really important. And I think that while it's a shame that a global pandemic is the cause of this, that more than ever, educators are taking risks, and that immediately shatters that, well, this is how we've always done it. Because guess what? You can't do it that way anymore.
Right.
You just can't. And I think sometimes it's easy to get into the mind frame of kids can't do that, they can't do this, they can't do this. And I think when you think about being being the digital learning specialist of a one-to-one district, it's like, I only want to use the word can. I think the kids can do this, and I think they can do that. Literally, I walked into a preschool classroom and watched them. We were doing this make your own pumpkin activity, and the teacher brought up a possible area where that could trip kids up, which is they're going to have to order the shapes, they're going to have to bring to front or bring to back. 4-year-olds did that. Like, they can do that.
Right.
So whenever I hear I don't think they can do that, it's like, well, let's just try, right? Like, what's the worst that could happen? Let's just try. So while I'm seeing like all these new tools being used, like I'm collaborating on a kindergarten Pear Deck math lesson right now with actually our math coach and a kindergarten teacher. Well, I think those tools are so cool. I think that risk taking and just that embracing of it is by far the most important thing that I've seen come out of this.
Yeah, it's so impressive to see the way people have pivoted, and that like the way this is the way we do it, or we've always done it this way, is such the enemy of going from good to great, right? Like anyone that comes out and says this is the way we've always done it hasn't looked at another way to do it, and I feel like that's like our job, is to make them look at it in another way, right?
Right. And crazy story about that. It was back in the spring, which granted was emergency virtual teaching, and I don't even remember what the meeting was, but I remember we're sitting there and we're having a meeting, and we sort of decided as a district to do like Monday, Wednesday, or at least the school I was at was like Monday, Wednesday was like math and science, Tuesday, Thursday, social studies, Friday was like world language, or we had these project-based math and ELA classes. So kind of pushing out 2 lessons a week, all this stuff. I was sitting in this meeting, and we're learning on the fly, we're doing this on the fly, and someone brings something up, like a change we could make, and someone else in the meeting goes, we can't change now, we've been doing this way for too long. And we had been doing it for 8 days, and I had legitimately, I think, like an out of body experience, because I was like, how are we as educators sitting in here and looking at this whole new way of teaching and learning, and saying that we can't change something because it's only been 8 days. We can change something. We have that power. We have that ability. And I'm like, this is 8 days.
Yeah.
I can only imagine how hard it is to get out things that have been in place for a lot longer than 8 days.
Right. I mean, you look at the teacher evaluation tool. One of the main points of the teacher evaluation tool is adjustment to practice. Like, this is the ultimate adjustment to practice. Like, if you can't adjust your practice right now, you shouldn't be teaching, right? There's no other
It's that conversation too of like, where do you want to put the work in, right? So like when we were kind of keeping track of student engagement back in the spring, and I was kind of taking note of students who were either, not completing assignments or struggling through them, and, what could I do differently? And one of the game changers, and it's so simple, but one of the biggest game changers was adding audio to Google Slides so they could hear my voice read to them.
Yeah.
And I looked at my numbers, and my numbers of completion skyrocketed. And all of those struggling readers that I had did so much better. And kids reached out to me and said, it was so nice to hear your voice.
Yep.
And when I put it out there that this is something that you can do to support struggling, it supports everybody. It's better for all of your students. But especially those struggling readers, or those auditory learners. And I got some pushback on it. I'm like, well, you're either going to spend the time tracking these kids down, emailing mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, trying to follow up with them, or you put it into putting the audio in the Google Slides, which I get, it's a little tedious. It can be a little time consuming, but that kid learned something. And isn't that the important thing? I'd rather spend my time front loading and making this lesson that can stand on its own 2 legs, and that can be, catch 90 to, I mean, there's no such thing as a perfect lesson, but 90% of my learners. I'd rather do that than send that email home. Obviously there were no grades in the spring, but think about what that's going to do, that kid's grade, that kid's self-esteem, that kid's confidence, what that kid thinks of him or herself.
Right.
And I think that's a tough conversation for some people. And
Yeah.
I think it's a conversation we need to have as educators.
Yeah. And even in the spring, to think about a kid being able to hear their teacher's voice, right? Like the just connecting on Google Meets was just great for kids to be able to
Right.
hear their teacher's voice. And then to have that other piece where you're reading to them, it just brings them, maybe they're alone all day because their parents are first responders and they're
Right.
working double shifts and everything else. So they're home, but they're able to sit and listen to their teacher read to them. I mean, that
Yeah.
it's a, it's a little more work on your end, but the impact is so huge.
Right. And I mean, like I just, so another funny story from the spring, we had this whole like wrap up, like end of the year lesson, little review lesson for the kids. And this one kiddo who didn't do it at all, but he had his own, he has this like own YouTube channel, and he took a, do you know the Animaniacs?
Yeah,
Do you remember
yeah, yeah,
that
yep,
TV
yep.
show? They have this song where they sing like every country in the world, and
Oh yeah,
he edited it so it took out, because we don't cover North America, it took out all of the countries that we didn't learn about. And he emailed the video to me and said, like, this is what you taught me this year. And I'm like, you know what, like, I don't care that you didn't do, the quote unquote assigned activity. Like, this was your way of telling me this is what you learned, and this makes me happier than anything else. And I think it's having that openness. And when you are that open and you don't just see it as this is the one way you're going to show me what you learned, kids know that. Kids can sense that, because he would have never made that video had he not known that I would have been over the moon when he sent it
yeah.
to me.
And the assignment itself, right? It's arbitrary. Like that we
Right.
created this thing, and this kid found something he was interested in that was, ancillarily. We're going to use that as a word.
Yeah.
So it's an ancillary correlation that it's correlated to the actual assignment. It's he's showing that he learned something.
Right.
Let him go with it.
Right.
He did it. He's passionate about it. He did it. He did a great job with it. Great.
Yeah.
What do we
Right.
did it. We did it, right? In the end, like,
Yeah, because I'm not measuring obedience. Because
yeah,
like,
yeah,
right, like, it
yeah.
doesn't it come back to that question? But like the kids are always shocked, right? When I like, I'm being a social studies teacher. I'm like, I want you to attempt the best spelling you can, but like I'm not grading you on spelling. And I have the whole conversation with them. I'm not your spelling teacher. Like,
Yeah.
I care that you're learning this stuff, and if this is going to get in the way of you learning this stuff, that's fine. I used to jokingly say, I only care about your spelling if it's so bad it insults me, and I would, I would never get insulted, for the record.
Yeah.
But I think just letting kids know, like, this is it, this is what I'm looking for,
Right.
and I'm not gonna track you down on these 1 million different things. I'm not gonna. This has to be spaced like this, and this has to be spaced like that. I'm looking for you to grow and look and learn and reflect on your own learning.
Right. Right. So, in looking at sort of our learning as professionals, I think this is going to feel like a really hard segue here. I apologize. The MassQ conference, right? This year virtual conference. Traditionally in person at Gillette Stadium, big deal. Like everybody's there. It's a ton of fun. You learn a lot. You meet vendors and all sorts of colleagues. How do you see that playing out this year? What's your role in the virtual conference this year?
So I am presenting this year, and
Excellent.
I'm really excited. And I've never done this before. I'm actually presenting like a sequel to what I
Oh,
presented last year. So last year, my presentation was titled G Suite Suites, and it was just all things really cool that you can do just using G Suite. So it was so successful that I decided, you know what, like, let's just do part two. So I'm doing G Suite Suites, the sequel, which is not easy to say, I realize. So hopefully I'll just introduce it and then never say it again.
right.
um, but I'm really excited, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I also think that, you know what, it's good to try something new, and I think that same energy that you feel when you walk into Gillette Stadium on the day of MassQ, when we do actually finally get to go back and do it in person, it will just feel that much stronger and that much better. But if we do this little segue this year and we have it virtually, there has been so much coming together and spirit of better together that I'm sure that's going to carry through with the virtual conference as well.
Yeah. Can you give us a little preview of G Suite Suites? the sequel?
So G Suite Suites, the sequel, is going to just have a various collection of little tips and little tricks. Again, all things G Suite. Man, like this is so hard to give like a little teaser without giving away too much. Trying to think of something like really specific I can give without giving away.
So like a little hidden secret maybe about G Suite that the average
little
user.
Hidden things. And sometimes things that like seem so simple. Like I had a lot of teachers tell me like, oh, when I assign a Google Doc, it's like hard to, where the kids are writing and organizing that. So like, hey, like, you can insert a 1x1 table or like a 1x2 table, color code, put your question here, or highlight where you want kids' answers to be. And guess what? It's easier for you and it's easier for your students.
Right.
And that is like one of my most watched bite-sized basics videos. And it's something that I would have totally taken for granted to just like use a table to organize students' answers. But hey, it helps people and it helps kids.
No, that's a really good one. My favorite, I think, is the .new to type in the Omnibox to type in doc.new or slides.new. That I feel like every time I tell people that don't know it, they're like, "Are you serious? How did I miss this?"
I always try to do it when I'm making an instructional video. I always try to show people how to navigate like that. Like I try really hard to do that. Another thing too, like little tip is like I don't think people realize you can get like an automated email. Granted, it comes at 5 a.m. every morning, but an automated email from your Google Calendar with your daily agenda.
Oh, I love that.
Because like I'm so much more apt to check my email than to check Google Calendar.
Yep.
And I think that's like such a like underrated, like nice little thing.
I'm gonna add that in my next tech tip. I do Tech Tip Tuesday.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then I post it on my blog afterwards. But I'm gonna add that for the
it's so helpful, especially like with people's schedules being crazier than ever. Really helpful.
Yeah. Christina Scilingo, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really looking forward to seeing you at Virtual Mass Q, G Suite Suites, the sequel. Got it. Okay. And Christina,
it was so nice talking to you.
Yeah, you too. Where can people find you online?
Okay, so my Twitter handle is Miss Scilingo, NPS. And also we have an instructional technology website with tons of goodies. And is it terrible that I like don't like I can send out the URL like that? Could it be linked to the podcast?
This will definitely, you can send it to me and I will put it in the notes of the show. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much. And anything you've got going on that you'd like to highlight? Any other work that you're doing?
Oh man.
Something fun you've got going on.
Something fun I've got going on. Well, I moving's not fun, but can it be like non-professional?
It doesn't have to be professional.
Okay, perfect. So we just adopted a little 6-year-old. Well, I say little, but she's a little chunky. Long-haired dachshund.
Oh, it's a girl. It's a dog. Okay, I got a little nervous there.
Yeah.
A little 6-year-old. She's a little chunky, but it's a dachshund. Okay.
Yeah, a dachshund named Nellie. And I'm super proud. I have not heard her barking or crying throughout this whole thing. So that has been a huge relief. So I guess like all the cookies I threw down there for her.
Awesome.
She's down there. I mean, she's like on my couch. I'm not like, she's not in the cellar alone or anything. But yeah, it is definitely great to have, except while I'm making all my like tech videos and stuff, she has this way of nudging my hand off of my computer. So she's not a huge fan of taking work home, but you got to do what you got to do when you're a tech coach in the middle of a pandemic.
Yep. And you're a dog mom, so you got to pay attention to the kiddo.
Exactly.
All right. Well, Christina Scilingo from Norton Public Schools, thank you so much for coming on the Get a Q podcast, and we will see you soon. Thanks for listening. Be sure to rate and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and anywhere podcasts can be found. This is the Get a Q podcast from MassQ, here to educate, connect, and inspire.